You will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London you are not doing that.
Let's move on to Assembly Member Hall.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Mr. Mayor. I'm discussing the protests. So on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar and on the day of the horrific terror attack in Manchester, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered along Whitehall and the Cenotaph to chant offensive slogans and clap to them, play loud music and wave offensive signs. Protesters gathered at Liverpool Street Station, screaming chants at passing commuters. Protesters could be heard chanting "from the river to the sea" and describing Israel as a terror state. So on the day of the Manchester terror attack, was that behaviour appropriate?
No, I don't think it was. I think it's important to distinguish between what's lawful and what's considerate, mindful and sensitive. And it's worth just spending time talking to Jewish people.
The tension inside the London Assembly chamber was electric. Assembly Member Hall's voice cut through the air like a blade, filled with anger and disbelief. "Because you will not do anything about this," she snapped, her words echoing against the wood-panelled walls. "And shame on you, because our Jewish community needs looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that." The room fell silent for a brief second, every eye fixed on the mayor. Sadiq Khan sat stone-faced, his expression unreadable. But beneath the calm exterior it was clear, this was not just another political debate. This was a moral confrontation, one that exposed the deep cracks running through London's leadership and its divided communities.
Reassured.
Member, but there's a number of interruptions now that you're making. I understand the point you tried to get across.
Mainly because he's not listening, Chair. He's not listening and he's not understanding.
But you can't keep interrupting. You have to allow him to answer in the way that he does, and then you can come back again. No one will object to that.
I tell you what, I'll finish here, because you will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London you are not doing that. My time is up, Chairman. Thank you.
Moments earlier, the debate had begun with a question about protests, but it quickly spiraled into something far deeper. On the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and on the very same day a terrorist attack struck Manchester, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered at Whitehall and Liverpool Street. They chanted "from the river to the sea," blasted music, waved signs calling Israel a terror state. Assembly Member Hall demanded to know, on a day of mourning and horror, was this behavior appropriate? Sadiq Khan hesitated, his voice soft but deliberate. "No," he said finally. "I think it's insensitive, inappropriate." He spoke of fear, of how Jewish Londoners felt unsafe and shaken. But for Hall that wasn't enough. She wanted a clear answer, not empathy without action.
Lennon, a racist to march, he's allowed to do so.
Mr. Mayor, look, you are the mayor of this wonderful city. Does it not worry you that there is one community that has to lock its children in schools for their safety? There is one community that can't come into London because of their listening to chants like "from the river to the sea," where they're looking at Palestinian flags and hostility towards them. Do you not see that in London, to have one community that is so badly disadvantaged by what is going on with these anti-Semitic chants, that you, as mayor of this great city, should do something about that?
Chair, I couldn't be clear in my remarks in relation to my concern about the fear, the increased fear Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the globe are feeling after the events of last Thursday. I've gone out of my way since October the 7th, 2023, to reassure Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the country and across the...
But they don't feel reassured. How can they feel?
Hall pressed harder. "Do you think that behavior is anti-Semitic?" she asked bluntly. The mayor shifted in his seat. "I can't generalize," he said. "It's insensitive, yes, but not necessarily anti-Semitic." That answer drew visible frustration from her. "So, you don't think screaming "from the river to the sea" is anti-Semitic?" she challenged. Khan leaned forward, careful with every word. "It depends on context," he said. "In some contexts, yes. In others, no." The tension in the room rose instantly. We all know what that phrase means, Hall fired back. It's hate speech, and you refuse to say it. The mayor sighed. We'll have to differ, he replied calmly. But his composure only made her angrier. To her, his silence on anti-Semitic behavior was complicity.
To say that from the river to the sea isn't, of course, no, because perhaps that's coming from a side that should be allowed to say that. To say terror state, perhaps that's allowed as well. It's amazing, isn't it? And yet merely flying a flag immediately it's far right. I mean, do you actually understand why the Jewish community feels unable to do, as you say, live, work and worship freely without fear of harassment, discrimination, intimidation or violence when they see the duplicity of your remarks when discussing protests on different sides? Do you not understand why they are so concerned about this?
Actually, I've never mentioned flags. I know she's obsessed by flags. I've never mentioned flags. I'm quite clear in relation to what rights were allowed in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, the right to protest, the cornerstone of our democracy. Even when you disagree with what people are protesting about, I will fight to the death the right to protest and the right to march and so forth, even the right of Stephen Yaxley.
She reminded him of his double standards, that he had quickly condemned far-right protests but hesitated to do the same for pro-Palestinian ones. You were unequivocal when you talked about far-right marches, she said sharply. But when it comes to these protests, filled with hate and anti-Semitic chants, you're silent. The mayor pushed back, calling her remarks unfair. The difference between us, he said, is that I'm consistent. You defend far-right marches but criticize others. Hall shot back instantly, her tone rising. That does not make me far-right. That makes me patriotic. The exchange became a verbal duel. Two leaders locked in moral and political combat over what defines hate, freedom, and hypocrisy in modern London.
There is one state that has a Jewish majority, and many people have an affinity to that who are of the Jewish faith. And on the day when a place of worship, on the Day of Atonement, has been attacked by a terrorist, you can understand, I hope, why Jewish people are feeling frightened. And let's not go to what the law is. I think you use the word appropriate. That's a good word. I don't think it's appropriate because people are feeling scared and frightened more so than they have, in the recent past.
Okay, so do you think that the behaviour of the protesters in Whitehall and at Liverpool Street is anti-Semitic?
Well, you're asking a general question about individuals' behaviour. I think it's insensitive, and I think it's...
No, is it anti-Semitic?
No, I don't think marching's anti-Semitic.
So you don't think screaming from the river to the sea and calling it a terror state is anti-Semitic?
Okay. So the members now extended a question from is the march anti-Semitic to now specific phrases of anti-Semitic.
Well, the phrase is constantly being used during these hate marches. This is what...
The more Khan tried to rationalise, the more furious Hall became. Do you not see that the Jewish community feels unsafe? She said. They can't even send their children to school without fear. They can't walk freely in their own city because of these anti-Semitic chants. And you, as mayor, do nothing. The mayor raised his hands slightly, trying to calm the room. I've gone out of my way to reassure Jewish Londoners, he said. Since October 7th, I've met communities, I've spoken out. But Hall wasn't buying it. They don't feel reassured, she said bitterly. Because you're not listening. Her words carried the exhaustion of a community that felt unheard and unprotected, a cry that echoed far beyond that assembly hall.
I'm asking the question, do you think to scream from the river to the sea, which they're doing during these hate marches, is appropriate? Do you think it is anti-Semitic?
Okay, I don't think it's anti-Semitic, and I think it's all about context. And we had the same conversation, by the way, Chair, a month ago when the member was arguing that the far right should be allowed to march. And we were having this conversation about Article 10 and freedom of expression. Now, I already said I think it's inappropriate and insensitive on the day of a terrorist attack to have these sorts of marches. Some slogans can be anti-Semitic, but it's all about context. And in certain contexts, yes, those slogans are anti-Semitic. In other contexts, they're not.
Well, we will differ on that view. All we ever hear is from the river to the sea, and we all know what that means, and that is anti-Semitic. You released a statement the day after the protests, and at no point did you criticise the appalling behaviour we saw. You were unequivocal when you were talking about one particular protest last month.
The debate ended the way it began, with anger, frustration, and heartbreak. The chair intervened as Hull's voice trembled with fury. "He's not listening," she exclaimed. "He's not understanding." The chair tried to restore order, asking her to let the mayor finish, but Hull had already made up her mind. Her final words cut through the silence like a gavel. "I'll finish here," she said coldly, "because you will not do anything about this. Shame on you, because our Jewish community needs looking after, and as Mayor of London you are not doing that." Then, with her time up, she sat back, the room frozen in uneasy quiet. It wasn't just a political statement. It was an indictment of leadership, a plea for justice, and a reflection of London's growing divide.